Olá, pessoal. Eu sou Arthur Torres do Mundo API e hoje realizaremos o webinar APIs como blocos, solucionando problemas utilizando integrações, com o palestrante Giuliano Lacobelli, CEO e cofundador da Stamplay, que falará em inglês. O Mundo API é uma plataforma cujo objetivo é divulgar APIs para criar relacionamento entre empresas, empreendedores e desenvolvedores em diversos segmentos. Acesse nosso site para conferir artigos sobre APIs, entrevistas com profissionais de sucesso do segmento e próximos eventos.
Can you hear me? Perfect. Okay, so let me just say hi live. So maybe you can also see me now. You should be able to see me now, is that right? All right. So you can't see me right now. Perfect. All right, so hi everyone. My name is Giuliano. I'm one of the co-founder of Stamplay, and as Arthur already anticipated, we're building a modular backend platform that enables developers to build backend of web and mobile apps by using APIs as Lego bricks. Let me just share with you my screen so that we can start basically. So today basically we know that building the mobile product is still pretty painful and expensive. And moreover, nowadays, application has a need of a lot of features, by the way, because apps need all kind of forefront, ranging from payment, messaging, transactional emails, real-time notification, and so on. So when building a product, given also the very, very high time pressure that you have to ship products quickly, no one's want to reinvent the wheel and build something from scratch over and over again. So what is happening is that this API explosion out there is basically shifting and changing the way our software is built on the web, because we're seeing more and more an increasing adoption of the APIs available out there to fulfill specific needs, so that the developers can focus on coding really unique to their app and just they can include services better when it comes to something that is not core for the tech, and it will take so much time to build it in a meaningful and robust way. Can you hear me fine so far? I had my chat open over here. So if you have any question, just feel free to stop me if something is not clear. So if you see my screen fine, you can hear me well. Sounds good. All right. So again, any question, or if something is not clear from the audio or the video, just type into the chat, and I'll be happy to answer to any question or doubt that you have. So, well, what we came up with is the template is effectively like API Lego for developers. We enabled you to put together core functionality starting from user management to data management and APIs, so that you can using a simple UI, you can define simple rules to code all the most common use cases and basic API integration on the back end. And it's easy as defining rules like if let a user sign up with Google, and when they do that, if they have like an @gmail.com account, send them a welcome email that says blah, 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 and have him on my MailChimp or my newsletter system, and maybe also have him as a customer on my CRM. something like that. All these happen without coding at all, because there is no reason to recode and go after this integration, because API changes over time, because the most common use case as a maniacal task is something that your developers and you as a developer you want to waste time with. Because even if you can cut and paste some boilerplate code, you still need to go after setting up different structure, put all your tools in place, test the code that you run, maintain it over time. It's a huge overhead, and all this work needs to be done upfront, even before really start scaling or coding what's relevant for your app. And when you want to build a successful app, it's not, all this kind of development doesn't add probably any value to you. You want to focus on what are the meaningful transactions to your product. And so we basically let you assemble and build your backend in a very efficient and quick way. Then we give you a RESTful API so you can start building the client side of your app on any platform you want, whether it is web or mobile based. I want to take this slide onto academic side. I would like to much more get our hands dirty on building something quickly together and giving you an overview on how quickly we can have something in production up and running, integrated with a couple of few APIs out there using Template. So if you have any question about how you would try to achieve something using the product, I can basically reply you right now, and we can eventually also build something together if you ask. So far, so good? Any question? Oh, it looks like there's no question so far, so I will move on. Okay, so Template is already online, is available, so, and it's free to try. So any one of you can just go online and sign up for a free account and can play as much as you want for free, basically. What I'm going to do now is creating a new backend of an application that we're going to call like Omundo API demo. As you can see, Template is telling us where we're gonna be, like the base URL of our backend that we're going to create. Hit create button. So right now we have an up and running backend that has been initialized. That is, we can reach out to this base URL that has this API key that we will see later. We can use it, and some other basic information over here that we can see in this simple and basic view that basically is a short recap of the basic information. So templates bring us both together all the core functionality that your app might need. So we started by solving, really addressing all the common headaches and common functionality that you have to face when building a new application, starting from the old user management. So our user component already provides all the authentication that you might want to have in your app, starting from the traditional email and password authentication to any OAuth provider that you can have, that you used to have online. And adding an OAuth provider is pretty straightforward and easy, as just doing like cut and paste the two strings that these providers gives you when you want to create a new app. So any OAuth provider, as you know, gives you an app ID and an app secret. There are the two strings that get used by your application to basically authenticate with a third-party service. So in this case, I have a couple of shortcuts that will cut and paste here the app ID and app secret of a Facebook application that I have here. And basically, just doing this, we already integrated Facebook plugin for our application, and I will see later how we can use this on the end user side. So how the end users of our application will be able to sign up using Facebook. We can also customize all the scope of these OAuth providers. So as you know, every OAuth provider requires the apps that connect with him to list all the permission they want to get. And this permission usually gives you access to different data of the end user that is signing up using that stuff. So right now we're using with this set of 3 informations. And we can eventually add more. So we can have on the same app running both Google, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And what template will do is that it's going to be able to sort of collect and the information about the same identity of a user around the same user. So if user is going to connect like with Facebook and Google separately, template will try to match all the information binding to the email so that that user will still count as a single user. Then if the application is a little bit more complex and we have more different types of users, we have what we call it roles. So roles is when you have different types of users that eventually might have different level of accesses on the resources that you have on your app. So imagine if you're building an application for schools, you're maybe going to have the students, or the teachers, the director of the school, and they can have different level of accesses on the research that we're going to create. So starting from defining roles, you can then define permission on how these users can like among each other or on the resources, and we already implemented some common patterns of permissions out there. How you can also switch to the role base, so you can fully customize like the access grid and the users can interact on the resource set out there. So resources, talking about resources, we start talking about how you can quickly create RESTful APIs to store, read, and save your data. And this is what we call objects. Objects basically are classes of resource that you want to represent in your app. So to create an object, now I'm going to click the Add button, and we need to give a name to this one. So imagine building an app that talks about startups. So I'm going to create the resource called startups and hit enter. So what we're seeing here is like the path of the endpoint that is just being created. We can start to leverage this over RESTful APIs and start finding the properties of these startups. So basically it's like creating a runtime, a database table or a Mongo collection, depending on how do you want to see that, where you're going to save and store all the information and data of your app. You can also define the properties in the schema, well, how the model of the resources is structured, so that our template will automatically be able to perform a type check on the backend for you. So maybe a startup is going to have a name, it's going to have a description, it's going to be funded or not. So if it's got some money, there's going to be a Boolean value, so it's true or false. And I don't know, any suggestion? Or I can just stick to this one. We can also define if this kind of use must be required or mandatory or not, if they need to act as a key, so if they're unique. And if I click over here, a new tab will open and will show us that the endpoint is working, and we have an empty collection of data over here because we haven't created any data. But if we want to start that phase and check how the RESTful API is working here. Oops, let's try to get rid of this. We can go back and something work on the API console. So the API console is where you can start testing all the APIs that you the runtime while working on template to test basically what they're building. So I'm gonna create the object API type. If we want to create an object type startups, that is the one we created so far. Automatically, the UI will show us like the additional fields and properties of this resource that we created. So let's say happy Lego for developers, funded is true, and name is template. And this will perform an API call and request toward the endpoint that is created that we've seen here that we were checking what on the other tab. We see the body that has been sent and the whole response that the platform is sending us to see that the research has been successfully created. This is pretty cool to quickly debug and test, either we're getting and see how data is getting stored without writing a single line of code, because basically already up and running is publicly available. If I go here and I hit refresh, we can see that we already have an available resource that is the one that we had just created using the API console. And now the APIs, the RESTful APIs that we build, come out with a lot of commodities and useful stuff. So you have full control, like on the payload of the data that is coming back at you from the platform. So if you want to make it lighter, you don't need to send a whole representation of the JSON of the resource. So that we want to avoid, like, I don't know, let's say that we don't want any kind of reactions. We just asking the research just with actions, the action pairs. So maybe we just want the description and the title of these startups. Okay, so the rule APIs is pretty flexible because it was a title name, I guess. Yeah, there we go, host name, sorry. So these, you have like all these, you can perform complex queries and perform searches and sorting the data. So if we can, let's create just another one and call it like API portal, and I don't know, false, and call it El Mundo. I hit send, and I go back here, hit refresh, and maybe we just want to sort this by the name. So we can see how we can have it reversely. Now we have almost, even if this has been created a second research, I'm sorting like alphabetically by name. I have it a certain collection. And this you have much more. You can search, select, or you can perform query like only if the name of the research contains like this kind of strings and so on. So you basically have a whole complete RESTful APIs for your research created in the overnight that already gives you all the support you might need or request to read your data. And then we'll start things to get even more interesting in this section. So it's working on connecting the core models of application with APIs out there that we have. So these are integration that we have built so far. We already integrated, and we making and adding this more and more over the time. The way we integrate to these APIs, we had like to face the problem of how are you able to maintain such a wider and ever-changing and growing portfolio of API integration in an efficient way. So what we're doing is basically being able to automatically plug in API of third-party services using what we call like a machine-readable description of the API that we want to integrate. So for us, we don't need to write a lot of code at all. We just need to create a machine-readable documentation, basically starting from the documentation of it effectively of the endpoint that we want to integrate into our platform and make this available to you guys in a couple of clicks. So I can start by maybe using some simple examples. Like let's start from send grid. It could be an option. So and you just need to remember the credential for this account that I created. I have it somewhere over here. Just give me a second, pardon. There you go, template demo. Okay, connecting to an API is pretty easily. Different APIs might hack differently. So some APIs ask you to connect to their service using an OAuth authentication. Some other use username and password. Other ones, some use like an API key. So in the case of SendGrid, they use a username and password. So we want SendGrid is like the #1 transactional email provider API out there. So it lets you to have application that send email that and see the deliver that all these apps and all these emails are delivered successfully. So just cutting and paste the username and password, let us connect it like the SendGrid component and API in here. Once I can show you, you can easily start making it work to the rest of the app. So I can go and manage and create tasks. Tasks are like the backend automation that you can create with a visual and UI tool. Start by creating a new task, and I can say something like, when the user signs up, we want to send an email using SendGrid. So this is pretty straightforward. All the components, features of triggers and actions that we can use to create a backend logic with this visual editor. The triggers are basically the events that all these components are listening on, while the actions are basically the APIs that we can perform toward both internal and external service that we connect into the app. So we define basically what the task should do, and we can just go through the short widget to create backend logic that let eventually add filters on when this task needs to be executed. So imagine if only the username is Giuliano, but it's like a welcome. Let's say that we're sending up a welcome email, want to send this to anyone, so I'm going to skip this. And then we need to configure the action. So these are all the fields required by the SendGrid API to send an email. And what we can do here is leveraging the data coming out from the trigger, in this case the user, to feed the action that follows. So we can send it to the user email. This will be compiled and replaced when the task will execute, so that every single user we receive is an email. The email is going to be sent by me, by the name of Giuliano, saying welcome, and say, hey, the user display name, welcome to Omundo demo. I can, just name this task like on sign up welcome email, and I hit save. This is like the first backend automation that we have in place here. And if we want to test this, once again, we don't need to write any code, or we need to from the client side already. I can just go back on the API, so look at create our endpoint and create a new user. It's going to be called Giuliano Lacobelli. The email at gmail.com, password is going to be pretty simple, and blah, blah, blah. Hit send. Here, once again, the API console is going to show us that the application, the resource, and the user has been created successfully. I can go back to action and check if the task has been performed and run and executed successfully, seeing out the logs of all these tasks. And you can see, like, it just run a few seconds ago with a status of 200. And if I go on my personal email, so this gmail.com account that I just signed up with, in a few seconds we're going to receive the email sent by SendGrid that I will show you in a second. Okay, it's probably done its way. So that, to give you an idea, you can start plugging in stuff, but you can get, of course, more complex and create more stuff. So imagine if you also want to connect to a newsletter system like MailChimp. We just need to click on MailChimp icon to integrate these APIs as well with our Stamplay app. I authorize my Stamplay application to work with my MailChimp account on my behalf. And so I can keep moving on, the company activated. And then again, now I have more actions and triggers available in my app that is getting more powerful as soon as I start adding more components. So once again, we can say that if the user signs up, we want to add him to a MailChimp list. Continue, I'll filter once again time. We need to tell MailChimp, first of all, which is the list we want to connect to another user to. Like the connection is lowered right now. It's loading available list. All right, there you go. So we're going to send it right to the system. And it already automatically looked up for all the newsletter list I have on my MailChimp account. So I just need to select one of them. Which email we want to send the user with his email, know some basic information. You can once again to on sign up once again to MailChimp. And we keep going basically anyway. Okay, as we're going back on my mail, we can see that we just received the welcome email that we created a while ago. That's been sent by to the candidate account that we just connected. Let me turn on that while any is everything clear? Give you another few seconds. But if you have any question you want to write, I can. Do you guarantee any kind of SLA for the app that uses templates as API gateways does? Of course, in terms of the APIs of this template app that we're creating, we do guarantee SLAs. We build the platform on top of both AWS and Google Compute Engine with a failover architecture so that your backend of your app is guaranteed to stay scalable and the uptime basically almost 100% of the time, but unless Amazon goes down, the whole Amazon, in that case, the whole internet will go down, but that's another story. So yes, absolutely. Regarding what are the connections toward the API integration is another thing that we take care of on your behalf, on your account as well. So you know that API is going to change over the time, or you might be in need of orchestrating the API connection that you have to your app, because maybe for any kind of reason you need to switch the provider of a service, whether they are transactional emails or payments gateways or, I don't know, real-time notification. We let you basically bring almost to zero the cost of switching provider, but not only, if this provider is going to change the APIs over time, you don't need at all to be worried about it because it's something we will take care of this. We're talking with these API providers and they're happy that we're providing one more basic way to build software and apps on top of their service. And so they notify us with a lot in advance if there is any kind of breaking change in their APIs or they have several updates, so that we can update the integration accordingly and your app will not suffer of any kind of outage or misconnection to those APIs. And we're making this stronger. Basically, we're working on this every single day, and we will soon roll out a way to also have a tighter and more basically flexible integration so that in the future we will also be able to upload the description of your APIs so that you can add them into your app as well. If you have some kind of proprietary APIs or you have like some internal system of your app or your IT guys or IT system, you have other application that sits on your network, so they're not publicly available APIs that we could not be aware of, you will still be in the position to write basically this kind of machine readable description and plug these APIs to a new app that you're building with template and make it very easily talk with all the rest of the APIs and the application out there. And so does this answer your question? Perfect. All right. So let's move on. To show you a lot of, a couple of components that might be useful and you can think about, or maybe something you're wondering of. A pretty interesting one is the webhook component. The webhook component is not a third-party API. It's something that we built, and it basically lets you push and pull data in real time from the Play app. So webhook enables you, on one side, to create endpoints to catch data that you can send from other systems or other apps that you already have. So I don't know. Let's call this test hook, this one, and I hit create. So already created now an endpoint that we collect that is going to be sent to him. So if we perform like an API request this thing, we will store the data for us that is coming over here. Just let me, I can pretty easily do like this. Maybe I can open it. And let's say that I want to add something like, I'm going to send like a request with a just simple JSON payload to that endpoint that I just created. All right, information is being received. So in the data section, that is where we can quickly see all the data that has been collected of somebody platform. We can see that we just received post request by the name of test hook, that is the name of the hook, and hold this is the information that I want to only you can start creating tasks around this. So I can create tasks and maybe that every time the web will catch something, maybe you want to create, imagine that we created like the startup features. Imagine now that you want to create it from closely or with an automated system. You can use, of course, the RESTful APIs of that system, RESTful API of this resource, or we can also create an instance maybe using fetching data from, so we can just exposing one endpoint. So we're going to say that every time to receive something, we're going to create an object. This object is going to be a site startup, and the description, we can take the description basically from the content of the webhook and then create it to give you an idea. So this is all on the backend side. On the other hand, you can use the webhook component to perform HTTP requests in post, put, or get toward any endpoint that you want when something happens to your app. So imagine that you have your own proprietary CRM. If the user signs up, maybe you want to syndicate this content over a custom endpoint, you can use the webhook component to do this as well. So this is like so far what is everything that you have on the back end. And then probably what the client side. It really provides you as well a CDN-backed web hosting. So you also have all the front-end assets available to be served, globally served for you without really doing almost nothing. So if we open like the base URL of our application, we can see that being initialized with a basic landing page to show us. We can start uploading our HTML files and assets of our application that we just created. And to do this is pretty straightforward. We have a command line tool that lets you upload these all the front end assets very quickly, like, and it's easy like doing git push basically. So in order to do this, we can freely go back to Someplay and, for instance, just start initialize a new project on our local environment. So we can work locally on the whole client side of app using our basically using your favorite tools and without worrying about having a different like workflow when building application, and just push it into the template cloud to have it up and running and online. And we can leverage the SDA that we built to easily interact and hook up the front end with the backend that we created with template. So I can very easily now visualize a new app that is with a common list template in it via the command line tool. You can prompt me to add like the app ID of the application and the HA key. This has just been initialized. And oops, the demo. So like this. Okay. So this is like the project with the project folder that has like template JSON file that is like small configured files that enable the command line to upload the data on template cloud. And I can, let's say I want to create a new very simple HTML page. I have some HTML assets over here, so we don't need to waste much time. I just copy the HTML files in here, and let's say template deploy. Oops, come out of the folder. Again, template deploy. It's going to ask me for a comment. Let's say first comment. And now the command line is preparing the upload of the old front-end asset on our template cloud. So if I go back over here, after the first deploy created, if I hit refresh, we're not going to see any more instruction on how to upload the data on template, or we're going to deployment history of the front-end that we uploaded so far. That is also useful because the more deploy that we do, the more we can have control of like rolling back on previous version in just in case we miss something. So we already do the deployment, the versioning of all the production deployment that you've done into your app. So if you maybe just mess up something or you have any kind of error, you realize that you have some errors into your application, you can easily roll back to the last working function version in a second. And if I go here and I hit refresh, you can see that I have now uploaded some basic HTML files to start testing a few functionalities via the SDK, basically. Let me check if there's any question of things over here. No, all right. So these are, you can also create the front end of the app and start loading anything. You can run your app on any on your custom domain. So if you don't want to get rid of this templateapp.com domain that already comes with HTTPS certificate, that's a certification on top of HTTPS protocol, you can do that, but you can also host the hosting anywhere else you want. If you already have some other external hosting that you're already leveraging, you can very easily just use backend and perform API calls for what you need on the backend, but still host the front end anywhere you want. Or eventually you can, if this is like, if it's a mobile app, you're not going to have any kind of problem or question with this. And so this is like a quick overview of what it can be done. Now to give you a better idea, show you maybe how easy it was to start creating some applications or clones of well-known applications like Hacker News, for instance. So Hacker News is a pretty popular online board. It's like one of the most famous in the Bay Area in California. And we've been basically, user can be able to sign up to some new content and basically publish links or posts where people can discuss and comment. Then they can upvote the most interesting ones, and they can search it and so on. And we've been able to create all this like in half a day with a few integrations and just some basic configuration of the basic components. So setting up email and password, and setting up RESTful APIs to manage posts, to basically hide all the URL and all the description, and adding a few API integrations like Algolia, Mailgun, MailChimp, and SendGrid to use the whole backend flow that you might have. That app basically has. A pretty interesting, relevant thing is that the original News leverages Algolia, that is like an instant search API that lets you index huge amount of data and perform lightning fast research on top of that, a search on top of that. And we basically been able to quickly integrate with Algolia and keep the data up to date, because basically your Algolia requires you to mirror the data on their data centers with just a couple of actions, so that anytime a new research or site post is created, we can push it to Algolia, so that Algolia will start indexing all information. And we just need to send them some couples of key value information, like the title, URL, description, the kind of information that we want to store on an index that is hosted by Algolia. And Algolia also let us like assigning from the outside an ID to these resources, so that we're able to set up a second task that at any time a post get modified, we can update the corresponding record on Algolia as well. And one more thing is worth mentioning, that all the resources that you create with Stump also comes with RESTful APIs for the most common social actions. So if you're building something or resource that needs to be upvoted by your users or downvoted, or where they can give like a rating using a number or comments, all these RESTful APIs has already been built for you, so you don't really need to care about nothing. So last thing maybe worth mentioning is wondering how flexible is this. I would say almost totally, and I'll tell you why. Something that's not out there yet, but we will soon let you run your own custom code on the back end with template. So this will mean basically having the best of both worlds in one single place, where you can use a visual tool and a web UI to quickly and easily avoid all the mundane tasks and manual work where you don't want to waste time with. So all the basic user stories and common use cases, and API integration where you don't want to waste time in going through the documentation and maybe find some outdated examples, find which is the right library or right SDK to run the request as you need. But while on the other hand, you will be able to set up custom endpoints that will basically execute your backend code. So it's like having basically a route on your Express.js application or Ruby or whatever. And this could be also be able to be flagged using tasks as well. So every time you can define rules like any time something happens, do run this code. And so you can start adding more complex logic on the back end. So if you want to make more in-depth searches or controls on the values of the resource that you're saving. So imagine like on these Hacker News example, you want to check whether or not the user has published like the 5th post so far. You can have a small code snippet that will check how many posts have been created by the user so far, and you can eventually perform an API request from the code, because as soon as the logic gets more complex, there is nothing more powerful like 10 lines of code to handle everything with a couple of if-then close or for cycles or whatever it could be. And this way, we want really to avoid you to waste time with putting all your tools in place or or fighting with servers, and just focus on coding what's really unique to your app. When what adds really value to your business, you can focus on what makes your app successful rather than, debugging boilerplate code or start gluing stuff together and waste time. We've been having, development team being able to make like backend work of 3 weeks in a couple of days, and they're totally happy with that. And we're collecting more and more of that. We definitely see like this kind of backend tooling is needed out there, and developers are completely happy with that. This vision resonates with our users because the demand of software development out there is much more higher than the supply. There will never be enough developer for the amount of software that is required out there. And the only natural evolution of this is that building software will be like using software. And that's basically the big bet we're making on it, where we feel like we're building something meaningful for the whole API economy and developer audience that is out there. So it's like 15 minutes left to the end of this webinar, so I would like to leave up to you to shoot any. So, okay, let me leave you any type of contact. So this is my email. If anyone wants to shoot me an email, or you want some additional questions later, or you want to try out the product and you have any kind of problem, the product is completely available over here. All right, I can write it on my screen, no problem. So probably the best way is to like this. Yeah, sure. It's gonna be even more. There you go. This is like my email, Twitter handle, and website. Is it okay like this, Arthur? And everyone? Okay, I'm gonna pass back the control of presenter to Arthur. All right.
Obrigado por nos assistir. Fique ligado no site para notícias sobre APIs, entrevistas com profissionais do ramo, coberturas de eventos e mais. Até a próxima!